7 with Mr. Larry Johnson and Andrei Martyanov. I'm already
Oh, that's pretty good.
Martyanov.
Yeah.
I'll take it. I'll take halfway there. So for all future listeners, today is Tuesday, January 24th, 2023. Yeah, 2023 at 2:08 p.m. Eastern time. And as I got banned from YouTube for interviewing doctors, and because I figure I'm not, I'm 32 years old, I have a biology degree, and that's about the extent of my experience here on this planet. I try to bring on experts when I want to talk about things, and if I want to talk about nuclear cores, I'll bring on someone that assembles thermonuclear cores. If I want to talk about the moon, I've had on Charlie Duke, who's walked on the moon. I don't know anything about geopolitics beyond a handful of audiobooks. So I figured I would preface all this by saying we're going to talk about Ukraine, the U.S. involvement in Ukraine. I've had on former CIA analysts who think that we should continue to back Ukraine. I've had on former CIA analysts who think that we should not continue to back Ukraine. I don't know. I've interviewed Ukrainian refugees, and my heart goes out to them. It's very easy for me to sit back and cast judgment from my safe apartment in America. That being said, I've never shied away from looking at both sides of an issue, so why in God's name would I start doing that now? So with that, Mr. Martyanov, please introduce yourself, and then Mr. Johnson, introduce yourself.
I'm Andrei Martyanov. I'm former Soviet naval officer. I graduated in 1985, and in 1990 I was retired for the health reason from the naval units, and the Soviet Union collapsed. The whole thing went completely down the drain. And we, in the middle 90s, we decided to move to the United States because Russia was basically disintegrating at that point of time. And we had nothing to do, especially with my background. And that's pretty much it. I'm an author. I wrote 3 books, writing the 4th one. They're pretty famous, as it turned out to be. And yeah, I'm being invited periodically on all kinds of talk shows, and I speak there, like, Russia Today or Crosstalk, and some Russian outlets invite me, so there you go.
Awesome, thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, Andrei's been a little too humble. His book, Losing Military Supremacy, is really must-reading because most Americans are not aware of what dire straits and dire condition our military force is in, and how completely misguided we are from a strategic standpoint, which it'll tie into Iraq or what's going on in Ukraine. My background, I spent 4 years with the Central Intelligence Agency. I worked both the operations side and the intelligence analysis side. Followed that with 4 years at the U.S. Department of State's Office of Coordinator for Counterterrorism. I handled the relations with the U.S. military, anti-terrorism assistance training, transportation security. Then that was followed by, I went into the world of consulting, and part of what I did for the next 23 years was provide exercise support for the U.S. military special operations community. So I bring a pretty unique perspective among people that have worked in government, because I've worked on the operations side of intelligence, on the analytical side, I've worked on the policy side of state. I've dealt in depth with the FBI. I was a chief liaison when they did the investigation of Panam 103.
Okay.
I dealt with NSA. I understand intelligence, how it's produced. I dealt with the tip of the spear, CAG and Dev Group, and the other special operations units, and for over 23 years. So Andrei and I make a good team. He's got just extraordinary knowledge about military capabilities. I bring a good understanding of how the intelligence integrates. And what we're looking at in Ukraine right now is it's an unfolding disaster for the West, and it's our own fault. We did this. We loaded the gun. We shot ourselves in the foot, and now we're screaming about we're bleeding out. Nobody's there to put on a tourniquet.
It's kind of like that Bill Hicks joke, where he's like, that's like early 1990s. We're looking at Iraq, and we leave a gun at its foot. And we're like, pick up the gun.
Yeah.
I don't wanna. Pick up the gun. You promise you won't do anything? I won't do anything. Picks up the gun. The hammer comes down and, kill everyone. But it does kind of seem like that's the case, that, again, having on you guys as the experts in this, but that is the flip side of the coin. On one side, we have the they're invading a sovereign nation, and that's horrible, and all the civilian deaths. But then there's the other side of I've had on Ray McGovern, and he's pointed out very clearly that there was a time and date when they said no NATO encroachment past this point, and we said got you loud and clear, and then we've continued to do that, and it's it's going up against your little brother and saying stop hitting yourself. And then when he gives you a black eye, no one really feels that bad for you.
Yeah.
Now, is there a way to tie in the waning military supremacy, the hegemon that the West has been enjoying really since 1945, and then more specifically 1991? Is there a way to tie that into our current involvement in Ukraine? If whoever wants to take that question.
Okay, let me answer this. United States, and it's a great nation. I live here in the United States, and obviously I don't recognize the country which we moved into from what we're observing today, and it's heartbreaking in many respects. But being Russian, we also have to, for example, understand that the United States was afforded a unique historical opportunity. Those come around in maybe once every millennium or so. And the United States got on their, so to speak, a high horse, if you wish, in 1945 due to the fact that basically the main issue of the World War II have been decided on the Eastern Front at the expense of 27 million Russians and 12 million Germans. And by the time the United States got there, not diminishing or in any way trying to downplay heroism of the Allied forces and Allied soldiers and mastery of many very good generals and commanding officers. The truth is, the creme de la creme of the unified Europe, really. Axis forces were not just Germany. You had SS divisions from Netherlands, from Spain, from France, from Scandinavia. It was unified Europe, which was fighting Soviet Union at that time, which is the historic iteration of historic Russia, so to speak. And the United States moved out of this whole situation being completely untouched and profiting tremendously from this war. And that was the foundation, and including the Bretton Woods financial system, which Soviet Union also agreed to, because everybody understood that basically the whole world was laying in ruins. Europe was in ruins, and you needed somebody and some stable currency to kind of overcome it. But then, of course, we have 1971 Nixon detaching. So there we go. And after that, and listen, already then, and one of the reasons he detached US dollar from the gold was the fact that he needed to finance the Vietnam War, which, by the way, is the first giveaway that so much for this best fighting force in the world in the history, which, of course, lost the Vietnam War. And if you have the country which cannot finance what amounts to large, nobody argues with it, large but expeditionary warfare, then you have to ask questions. Is it that great or is it that big?
Yeah.
And today we have the situation when they miscalculated so badly, of which I was warning for a decade now, that they do not know what they are dealing with economically and militarily. And they don't, especially considering now the dismal cultural and educational level of current American elites. Guess what? They got themselves in the trap now. And they need to live with this somehow. And there you go. But they don't understand. On the other side, they have people who have been fighting for more than 1,000 years, you know? So there you go.
Yeah. Mr. Johnson?
Well, let me tell you, I think what most Americans fail to understand is that from the time Putin took over, the first thing he did was he stopped the rape of Russia by, we call them Russian oligarchs, but you had a lot of Americans in there dipping their beak in the water as well. So he put a stop to that. That was sort of the first friction point with the West, because Putin wasn't putting up with that. Then the United States under George W. Bush, first it started under Clinton, but then under George W. Bush said, okay, we're going to expand NATO. We're going to bring in Georgia and Ukraine. And that was in 2008. And Putin made it very clear, no, 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 no. You do that, you're crossing the red line. Now, why was the United States wanting to expand NATO? It's real simple. They needed to bring in other countries to make up for the decline in troop strength of the United States and Great Britain and Germany. So that's why you bring in other countries. You build up your numbers by having more members in the club. That led to an outbreak of war between Georgia and Russia in 2008, and the Russians won that very quickly. And so from 2009 on, this anger turned on Putin, because Putin before that had actually been somewhat celebrated in the West. There was a clear demarcation in Ukraine. You have half of the country is disposed towards Russia. The other half is disposed towards the West. It is Eastern Orthodox, and basically I'm simplifying this, but Eastern Orthodox to the east of the river Dnieper, and it's Roman Catholic to the west. And even though they're both Christians, they don't necessarily get along. And so in 2014, the United States and Great Britain, with their intelligence services, helped mount a coup that forced Yanukovych, I believe, out of office, and led to this incident called the Maidan, where there was shooting and killing, and perceived shooting and killing by the Ukrainian forces under Yanukovych. The parliament, the Rada in Kiev, did not follow the law. They oust the president, and then we get this recording of Victoria Nuland talking about who the United States is going to put in power in Ukraine. And so right after the Western-friendly government goes into Ukraine in 2014, then all of a sudden, the Rada passes a law. They're going to ban Russian, speaking of Russia, Russian over in the Donbass, on the territories that abut Russia proper. Well, imagine the reaction in the United States who said, okay, we're going to ban Spanish in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and Southern California. No more speaking Spanish. You know, that'll go over well. That'll be well received. So, and then Ukraine, not the Donbass, not Luhansk, not Donetsk, not Luhansk. It was the army of Ukraine that began attacking those provinces. Their militias responded, and in the course of that, you had defections from the Ukrainian army into that. And since 2014, you've had a NATO-funded war against Russian-speaking populations in eastern Ukraine. So, and during every one of those years, 2015, 2016, 2017, the United States and Europe through NATO were conducting massive military exercises in Ukraine. We always said that, oh, these are defensive exercises. Well, I can show you a video on YouTube of a Marine amphibious unit landing on the beaches in southern Ukraine. Now, last time I checked, a Marine landing is not a defensive operation, okay? So this, we have been provoking and poking, and at this point, the Russians finally said, okay, this is like you've been at a bar, you've been finger poked 10 times, next thing you know, you're going to punch the dude in the nose. That's what's going on.
And I think we have this idea of, because we do still have a large military, I think we have this idea of, well, why would they fight back? If it's you and 9 friends poking a guy at the bar, in your mind you might think he knows he can't win. Why would he fight back? Well, at a certain point, all you really have is like your own sovereignty. All you really have is your own honor in this fleeting world of this existence where you're born. By the time you figure out what's going on, you're pretty much dead. Yeah. If you have, I remember my older brother was picking on me once when I was like 7, and I kept like complaining to my mom, and then I finally told my dad. My dad was like, "Just punch him back." I was like, "All right, like just defend yourself. Like he's probably gonna kick your ass, but just punch him back." And I finally did. And I remember I ran to my dad and I was like, "I punched him back, but he's really angry." But we were on a boat in the middle of the lake, and he was like, "Well, why the fuck would you do it on a boat? There's nowhere to run to." But the point is if you have nothing but your own honor and sovereignty and self-respect, they're eventually going to bloody your nose. And so, yeah, we can dump $1/10 of $1 trillion into Ukraine, but in the same reason that you cannot defend the actions of John F. Kennedy and, well, thankfully he tampered Curtis LeMay of October 1962, and then turn and say, why is Russia acting like this? You either respect your own sovereignty and respect the idea that it's okay to love your homeland and defend it, or you don't. And what we're seeing right now is, again, in my amateur 32-year-old opinion, it's just hypocritical is what we're doing.
But Andrei should speak up now about the military imbalance, because the reality is the United States is at a decided disadvantage, and Andrei's scholarship on this is really first rate.
Andrei, please educate us.
I mean, there's nothing to educate, really. It's the fact which actually, to some certain degree, has been discussed among some circles in the United States. And I remember Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, who stated a few years back that nobody really quaking in their boots looking at the U.S. military. Again, it has to be understood that Russia fought forces which, and again, Pentagon is not even in the same league as Wehrmacht was. And then, of course, we're talking about the military and military economic balance. And I am on the record, and I stress this point nonstop. And this is not just the idea of what I certainly picked up from Michael Hudson. It goes back to my background in the military field, that what is called today Western modern economics is not really economics. It has very little to do with the economy, and it has everything to do with making money. That's what created actually the mythology and the illusion that the United States is so huge economically. It's definitely dominant in many financial and political institutions around the globe. There's no denial of that. But they were created on the U.S. tick, so to speak, on U.S. money, like International Monetary Fund and World Bank and things like that. The problem is they calculate all that in the useless metric of U.S. dollars.
Yeah.
And of course, it is the same as the favorite shtick, so to speak, in Pentagon, and very many people who are totally ignorant, even they talk about weapon system, how sophisticated it is. They should be asking not how sophisticated it is, but how effective it is.
What can it do?
And here we have, you could be very sophisticated and very effective, but militarily, United States, again, look at the history starting from Korean War.
Yeah.
Apart from a Turkish shoot against the third-rate Iraqi military, which for half a year allowed the United States with impunity to preposition its forces, how many wars did the United States win? None.
Yeah.
In fact, if you look attentively, everything the United States does militarily, and of course, we have now the situation with Afghanistan, and what many people do not, they do not want to talk about it. Let me put it this way. The escape from Saigon in 1975, those dramatic shots and videos, actually, they are not shameful, because this was only one company of the Marines guarding the U.S. embassy. It is, in some sense, it's very big drama of the Vietnamese who wanted to escape and, things of this nature. It's understandable. There's only one company of the Marines in the embassy. When you have Afghanistan, you have the whole damn army escaping in 72 hours, running, dropping the equipment. This is unprecedented.
Yeah.
And now they need to somehow also cover up. And Russians call it the goal, to score prestige goal. When you lose with a disastrous score, at least you want to score some goal to say, hey, we didn't lose with the zeros.
Yeah.
And they need to cover this up. They need to cover this up. They need to refocus. It's one. I'm not saying it's the major, but it's one of the major reasons of the escalation and the situation with Ukraine.
And
Tommy, maybe the easiest way to say this is the United States does not have the best military in the world. We have the most expensive military in the world. So this is like outfitting an armored unit with Lamborghinis and Ferraris. Yeah, man, they're beautiful. They look good. They go fast. But where the hell? You don't drive them in the desert, and that's where you need to drive them. So go ahead.
It makes me think of I always love, with everything in life, be it skyscrapers or dinosaurs or planes. I love hierarchies. It's just something about my OCD brain. And I've always hated whenever I Google like the most expensive phone. I want to see like an iPhone from DARPA. I want to see something that can like project a hologram. But it's always just a platinum plated phone. And I'm like, that's bullshit. That's not, it's so, back to what Andrei said, it's not about sophistication. I don't care how effective is it?
Let me give you a very simple example. Back in 2001, I was doing an exercise at the Joint Special Operations Command. My job was to role play the U.S. ambassador to Colombia. JSOC had been alerted about a terrorist threat or something, and so what we were testing was the ability of the commander of JSOC to get on his plane, fly off, and then communicate over a secure system with the ground. So that's what we were testing. And remember, this is the pointy end of the spear. It doesn't get more secret and blacker than this particular part of the world. He takes off and he comes online and it's going. So we ended up having to go back to the old system of faxing things over a Stu3 line. So it's just a reminder that despite all the money that's being poured into it, despite all the technological advantages, they still have basic problems with communication, transportation. No, that does not go away. Military does hot washes after these exercises to discuss lessons learned, and they don't learn a damn thing.
I think it's Garrett Graff's book, Only Plane in the Sky, about 9/11, specifically about what happened on Air Force One. And it is just a 3-ring circus clusterfuck. It finally came out to like, how'd you guys find out what was going on? And there's just a quote from Bush like, "Oh, we turned on CNN," and it's like, oh god, like they're like the command and the control, like the E-4B doomsday planes are in the sky. No one can communicate. It eventually came into like they just turned on talk radio and got updates, and it's in these brief glimpses that you see behind the curtain. You see, as Andrei said, at the gold window in the Bretton Woods conference, you peek behind the curtain and you go, oh, it's not tethered to gold. It's tethered to a printer. And you go, oh shit. It's all an illusion.
Well, I mean, what's happened over the course of this last year is the United States, again, this was an act of suicide, economic suicide, by attacking Russia, thinking that they could crush the Russian economy, has now delinked the U.S. dollar from the international system. In the past, the U.S. dollar controlled the system. It was the petrodollar.
Yeah.
Now, what Russia, China, India,
BRICS.
Brazil, South Africa, BRICS, they're saying, okay, we're creating an alternative system. It's going to be based in gold, and we're not going to have to use another damn dollar.
Which then begs the question, was it intentional? Because the U.S. military, though not as big as it's purported to be, is still a formidable foe. The only way you would ever bring it down is you're not going to go toe-to-toe against it. You would do some sort of internal demolition. Now, are we going into conspiracies? I don't know. That's where I like to reside. But you then have to wonder, is that what this is? If it's so apparently an economic suicide, pushing the other budding powers into a unified group where they then detach from us and instead kind of like a magnet coming off of the tit of the U.S. petrodollar and now going back to gold, you got to look at it and go, was this really just the perfect storm, or was this an intentional destruction? Andrei?
No, it's not intentional destruction.
Just stupidity.
It's just stupidity. Never underestimate human stupidity. Again, if you look at these guys who run today what everybody loves to talk about, World Economic Forum. For a few years back, I believe, I don't remember who wrote this article in the American Conservative, and he wrote correctly that this World Economic Forum elites won't be able to reset the wall outlet, let alone to reset anything out there. And I'm writing the 4th book. It is incompetence across the board, as I already stated, militarily, economically, scientifically, even if you look at the climate, global warming and Greta Thunberg. I mean, you look at those people, many of them, not all, are morons. And those who really begin to think, first, I am also on the record, primarily this humanities field today. It was great before, but primarily what is producing today in Ivy League humanities field, let alone in UK, it is a complete academic fraud. Most of them, you cannot talk to those people. They're absolutely ignorant. They are indoctrinated, to be sure. As friend of mine, former senior officer, I would say, so I will not disclose his name, but he was a very important person in senior level, very senior level. He was speaking a couple of years ago, riding the train in Arizona, the one which goes, shows you, those places, national parks and things like that, that it's one-day trip. And he was talking with some department chiefs from the State Department. They didn't know who he was. And he drops to them the name of Valery Gerasimov, Chief of General Staff of Russia. And those two people, they look with the empty eyes into him and ask the question, who is Gerasimov? This is State Department.
Yeah. But, go back and think about it. We're going to impose sanctions on Russia. And that's going to bring them to their knees. If you're president, what's the first question you ask? You say, can you give me one example, just one, in history, in the last 80 years, where we've imposed sanctions and we've brought about regime change and achieved the outcomes that we wanted? And the answer to that is not one. So that begs the next question. How dependent is Russia on foreign exports? Answer, Russia is the richest country in the world in natural resources, is probably, after maybe the United States, not even the United States anymore, it's the only country that is entirely self-sufficient. Yeah. It produces everything it needs. In fact, it produces things the United States cannot produce. Example, rocket engines. That's why the United States has been like some poor Uber rider begging a ride to the space station from the Russians, because we can't build it anymore. So, we keep looking in the mirror. I don't know if you knew this guy in high school who was the middle linebacker or the quarterback and, really fit back then. But now he's 55 years old. He's 200 pounds, weighs 200 pounds more than he did. He's got a beer gut, and he still thinks he's a stud.
He still sees stud.
Yeah. The dude got to get a better mirror and look at it. And that's our problem. The United States has no self-reflection on this. We have set ourselves up for an ass-kicking on a major scale. George W. Bush pulls out of the Anti-Ballistic Missile Defense Treaty in 2001. What happens? Russia tries to stop him. No, we're going to go forward with it. Well, we get distracted with the so-called war on terror. The Russians build up robust anti-ballistic missile defense systems. S-500, S-550 are the most advanced. And then Trump pulls out of the INF, the Intermediate Nuclear Force Treaty. And Russia's trying to, and so what does Russia do? They build hypersonic missiles, and they're deployable, they operate, they function. We can't do that yet. I know for a fact the guy who's involved with heading the program up, and he said just 2 weeks ago that we're not going to have anything possibly deployable until the end of this year, maybe. And so then in August of 2020, last August, Russia finally had enough. They realized they can't trust the United States to negotiate. They can't trust the Europeans to negotiate. And so they said, New START treaty, forget it. We're going our own way.
Mm. And they fired the Kinzhal, I believe, right? That's their hypersonic missile.
Oh, Kinzhal, yeah. Well, Kinzhal has been around since 2017, which was on the initial operational capability. And it was already then available. Since 2018, it has been procured in the proper numbers and has been used actually in Ukraine to a devastating effect, actually, including the penetrating very deep under the ground in the former Soviet arsenals, which were built there in case of nuclear war. But here we come to this another thing. there is a very wrong perception in the Western side of the high tech. When they call, and I remember Kunstler wrote about it beautifully, as only James Kunstler can write about it.
I've had him on here before.
So, yeah, but I was on the record before that, but he wrote correctly. What is this tech sector in the United States today? Well, it's primarily IT. Well, nobody argues there is some technological dimension to it, but when people say, oh, the tech sector, Amazon, or some IT companies, what do? Well, 90% of what they do are they writing code, you know? And so many people don't understand that while code writing and good programming and software engineering is extremely important, you need to produce hardware, and I'm talking not just iPhones, which are produced anyway in China or you need to produce a real high tech. A real high tech is aerospace industry. A real high tech is the military industrial complex. You need to produce state-of-the-art technological wonders. And when you look at it, well, we had the situation, that's how I lost my job as the chief of the laboratory in the aerospace company. We can thank Boeing for Boeing 737 MAX, which crashed and killed 300 twice, yes. And for the idiots who even, and if they call it high tech, well, evidently we're talking about the plane with the pedigree from 60s. You cannot update it anymore. And while, for example, original 777s are outstanding planes, I love flying 777s, and let alone my love for Boeing's 747s. But look what they did to Boeing. They killed it, basically.
Yeah.
And that's the high tech. That's the real thing which matters. You can get the guys for writing you a code practically anywhere, you know? Where will you get that serious engineer? Where will you get a serious military professional? That requires a horrendous amount of time and effort to train, educate, and basically allow and procure in the real life and real economy. Yeah. United States for now still produce some decent cars, no doubt about it. In terms of trucks, there's nobody even, well, Japanese maybe, you know, they produce excellent Tacomas and all that. But other than that, I mean, when you begin to look at it, what else? What else?
And it's not in that, and I think Elon Musk, for, you know, a lot of people hate him, a lot of people like him. I don't really care. But he did have a great quote, and he's like, I think he said it in like the height of the lockdown, so summer 2020, fall 2020. He was like, we have this idea that we can just legislate society to go forward. We can just, with a stroke of a pen. And he was like, you have to make stuff. You have to physically make stuff. You can't just send checks to everyone. There is, I think he said, there's no horn of plenty where everything comes out of. The steel, the ore needs to be refined and delivered and melted and smelted and pressed. The things have to be built. That's why, you know, despite the fact that it was also on the back of 27 million Russians as opposed to the 425,000 Americans dead in World War II, the actual power also came from the fact that we could build a P-51 fighter jet like every 66 minutes, that we are putting out Liberty ships every day. Physical things. Now, granted, we don't live in 1945, and there is a massive technological component to it. But as we saw with the pandemic, the second that supply line breaks down, ones and zeros on a screen don't mean shit.
Oh, no, they don't.
They don't mean shit. An EMP blast will show that. A coronal mass ejection will show that. We don't make anything.
Well, you've seen the supply shortage has become a real thing in the war in Ukraine. It has completely exposed the United States and NATO as not having the wherewithal to supply what's needed in an industrial war.
A hot war.
Because, in the past, you know, we've been fighting the goat herders and the sheep herders and they were never firing artillery at us. So we get in this and we're overconfident. Oh yeah, we got this. Well, what we discovered is General Dynamics in 1 month produces what Ukraine would fire in 3 or 4 days. So just with the math problem there is if Ukraine fires for 12 days in a row, they fired everything that General Dynamics could make in an entire year. And so what has the United States done? It's running around, it's telling the Israelis, hey, you know those hundreds of thousands of artillery shells you got there, give them to us. We got to send them to Ukraine. We go to South Korea, same deal. But then we want to make fun of the Russians for, the Russians are getting supplies from North Korea and Iran. Oh, they're getting some supplies, but they're not. Their missile supply, their artillery supply is being produced at home domestically, and it's keeping pace because right now Russia's firing at a differential rate of, for every one that the Ukrainians fire, Russia's firing 19. And I don't care. Get into a gunfight where you've got one gun in your bullet, and I got in your gun, and I've got 19 cartridges of mine. Who do you think's going to win that one, Tommy?
Yeah. Well, again, it's that Bill Burr joke, right? And it goes to show my grasp of geopolitics. All I do is quoting comedians. I'm realizing 45 minutes into this, but he was like World War II. There's some might have been Patton or someone who's like one German tank can take on 4 of ours, and they look at him and it's like 1948, so the war's obviously over. He goes, well, how did you beat them? He goes, oh, well, we just made 5, and that does work. Numbers do work, and that is again what we're seeing. We've been fighting Iraq and Afghanistan. That's like me fighting a kid in a wheelchair. Yeah. It's a real confidence boost. But what happens when I meet like a drunk Mike Tyson in the streets? And I'm like, all right, I'm going to, and then he knocks my brain out of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's exposing all of it. And it's, it kind of does seem like almost like a Ponzi scheme. Like we're going in knowing that we can't furnish them forever. And so we are now pulling all of NATO into it as well. It's almost like misery loves company. We're pulling everyone down into it. And Andrei, where do you see this going? Is this going to completely deplete all supplies? Is this going to revert to a technological, I guess, regress? Are we going to stop with JDAMs and heat-seeking missiles? And are we going to revert to more of a dumb bomb, dumb artillery type thing? Is that going to be the only way to keep up?
No. First, even in terms of the dumb bombs, you cannot continue to compete with the Russians, for example. But and again, smart and high precision weapons, and Russia uses them. The expenditure of Russian cruise missiles, ranging, apart from the enormous variety of them, ranging from good old X-22, KH-22, which is a 1960s technology, but now with the new head, new seeker, and new everything, which become to the ultra-modern 3M14Ms, which have the range of 4,500 kilometers, and X-101, and they already have X-101M, which has the range of 10,000 kilometers. Yeah, United States not even in the same league. I have to say that. So, and they expanded so many of them. And don't forget the story since the March of last year, that Russia was running out of cruise missiles regularly for every couple weeks. Ukraine reports to Pentagon that Russians run out of cruise missiles. And now, just yesterday, we had again the barrage of cruise missiles and over Kyiv and other critical energy infrastructure which supports Ukrainian operations. So no, we're not going back to just dumb bombs. It's just that the United States, do you know that the United States cannot produce any more tanks?
They don't produce Abrams?
No, you don't. United States cannot produce Abrams. The only remaining plant in Illinois, I believe, or Michigan, I don't remember exactly, but there's only one plant. It mostly does the repair. There were some kits which were sent to Egypt to put together. I believe they got the Abrams without the net-centric capability, which their latest upgrades are. But no, United States doesn't have a new battle tank. And that is why when they say, okay, let's send these 10 Abrams in order to convince Germany to send those 80 Leopards, Russian tankers and aviation are salivating in anticipation because you have to understand what is this all about. Once you see those videos and photographs of Abrams, they sent 10. It's not going to make any difference whatsoever. But for Russians, they enjoy it. They're salivating to do their propaganda coup again, to show both captured and destroyed Abrams, and whatever the number Bundeswehr will send those Leopards. And again, there is another thing which is operational purely. You need to look at the coefficient of the technical readiness. Coefficient of the technical readiness in NATO troops in general is dismal. Just to give you example, out of the tank company in Bundeswehr, which is about 14 tanks, you are allowed the what is called KTG, or coefficient of the technical readiness, to be about 0.6. In other words, you can have only 60% of the tanks in company being ready for fight. And so there you go, 0.6. Do you know what is the coefficient of technical readiness in the Russian tank forces? 0.91. So you have to have less than one tank out of the company, because Russian tank company usually 10. Well, it could go as 11, sometimes 12, but it's slightly less than. But you have to have, out of 10, you have to have more than 9 tanks essentially ready. And there you go. That explains things. And of course, then you look at the Abrams is the morally obsolete tank. It's the same as pretty much most of the NATO tanks, be that Leclerc or those very talked up Leopards. And I have people from Bundeswehr who contacted me, who commended those Leopards. They say, my gosh, that's going to be, those going to be the burning coffins basically on the tracks. And then the other thing, and this is what they don't understand, Russia has an air dominance over the battlefield. There are many hundreds of those pesky Mi-35, Mi-28s, K-52s flying out there with some anti-tank weapons which the United States cannot even have for the next decade, just to give you what Hermes alone is. And those are very long-range weapons. Some of them, which are procured, since the 2018, and they perform brilliantly in Syria. For example, like Hermes, 25-kilometer range weapon. Actually, it's Mach 4.2 anti-tank weapon. That's and shouldn't forget it uses the complex mixed type of the targeting, from shouldn't forget to laser, laser illumination, all kinds of things. And this is not the type of the war United States ever fought. That's the whole thing.
Well, that's depressing.
Yeah,
Larry?
Let's just add to it the fact that the M1 Abrams has got a crew of 4 with a loader. The Russian advanced tank has an automatic loader, so you got one less person running around inside a tank.
Yeah.
So that's a technological advancement that the United States hasn't caught up with. Number one. Number two, it takes at least 6 months to train a crew to operate, just to drive it. This is not like you in driver's ed in high school, where you go out and hop in your mom or dad's car and drive around the block a couple of times and then go take the test and you're good to go. No, this is 6 months, and that's just to learn how to drive and operate the tank, one tank. But these tanks are supposed to operate in companies, battalions, or in different unit sizes. And when you start at basically a company size element, where that company size has to integrate into a battalion, and so that whole training process itself takes 6 months to a year. Ukraine doesn't have 6 months to a year. What you'd be looking at a minimum is 18 months of training and preparation just to get a tank crew ready to go, and then as soon as you put them out on the battlefield, they're dead. So this is like sending horse cavalry to do charges in World War II. That's what it is.
Yeah. It almost seems like there's some overarching law, right? Like there are truisms that transcend all of history. I mean, just a little, like what goes around comes around. Early bird gets the worm. It doesn't matter what civilization it is, what millennia it is. They're just these kind of certain, right? Parents get old and die. You're going to grow up and you're going to have a kid. Whatever. It seems like there are these like certain laws of empire. Whether it's...
you're speaking, pardon for interruption.
No, go for it.
You're speaking very much like Marxist. Believe me, I know a little bit about Marxism.
Oh, God.
Because, well, no.
Oh,
You're absolutely correct. Because it is Marxism main, one of the major pillars, theoretical pillars, that history is developing in the spiral. It's just that it repeats itself each time on the new level.
Yes.
So there is nothing criminal about, I use some Marxist Marxist methods in, for example, dialectics to look at the economy issues. I'm not a Marxist,
Sure.
Sure. I'm free enterprise capitalist,
Yeah.
But the point is you can use this analytical method, and that's what it is. You're absolutely correct. We are basically each time spiraling up. Each time on the new level, it repeats itself, as they say, famous, was it Santayana who said it, that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, so which is absolutely correct. Correct. And when you say that empires have the laws, yeah, they do. They do. And once you know those laws, or at least they have a good idea what they are, suddenly you become empowered in many respects, because you obviously cannot perceive or forecast everything. It is impossible. Even supercomputers cannot do that. We already saw it in Ukraine with the United States and NATO forecasting, and this forecast being flushed down the drain in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But the point is, you can certainly perceive the shapes which come, and Larry is correctly states, time is everything, and timing is everything. And when you're not ready to do anything, and then again, you say that I want to quote one of my wonderful people who blog or post on my discussion board. And it's a wonderful quote, because he said that the United States had the best success when it was not on the battlefield, but behind the plow. And this is so true, because you would be surprised how Russians look at the United States. Not today, of course. Today it's becoming very different. But before that, it was admiration for not what United States perceive about yourself. Russians always admired the, American technological enterprising spirit, obviously the beauty of the country, this, so things of this nature, they flew to the moon, those wonderful American, boats from 70s, I'm talking about those Pontiacs and Chryslers and, things like that. That was beautiful, And people, that is why many Russians know America of 50s, oh yeah, So it's like, but it's, I don't think anybody really kind of was impressed, except for the obviously U.S. Navy and its performance in the Pacific War in World War II, and everybody obviously. Listen, I graduated Naval Academy. There was obviously a degree of professional admiration, for. So it certainly was there. But again, today, it's like send in the clowns, guys. We'll see what's going to happen, or rather, the world will see.
Yeah. Well, see, Tommy, you have this sort of the disadvantage because you were born right at the end of the Cold War.
I was born in '90.
And
I know nothing but number one.
It wasn't even a memory or a reality for you. Whereas Andrei and I grew up and lived through really the height of it, and during all that time, even when the Soviet Union and the United States almost came to a nuclear exchange over the Cuban Missile Crisis, or Russian support for Vietnam during the Vietnam War, or Russian support for insurgencies in Angola, Nicaragua, and the United States providing support for insurgency in Afghanistan. During all of that, where we were basically arming surrogates, and they would still talk to each other. There was still a fundamental respect for Russian culture and Russian people. Not now. I mean, I'm hearing the craziest stuff from people, and they're and just condemning all things Russian, all things in Russian culture, without having a real fundamental understanding. And I really believe part of this goes to the fact that what Russia has become is an Eastern Orthodox Christian nation, and they adhere to and embrace, as part of their theological commitment, belief that homosexuality is wrong. And in contrast, what we have here in the United States is a delusion, a mass delusion, because we keep telling people, oh yeah, the Russians are losing in Ukraine. Oh yeah, men can have babies. Oh yeah, transgender, man, there's 72 genders. There's no such thing as biology. Oh, global climate change. My God, we're going to die in 12 years. And it's all completely divorced from science, completely divorced from reality. And yet we embrace those delusions now in the West. And Russia doesn't. And that pisses us off.
We can't force it. I mean, I personally don't give a shit if, two guys want to get married. But when we have these ideas of drag queens in front of kindergartners and we say it's stunning and brave, you can't accept the rest of the world to adopt that.
No, it's not only that. It's definitely there is. You see, that's the problem, the issue. The postmodernist culture is entirely relativistic.
It's a cesspool.
And then when you have the Russian Constitution officially defining what family is as the union of man and a woman to give birth and rear children, it's almost it's a global political statement. And this is not just Russian Constitution, which is in the Russian Constitution, which has the whole number of chapters, the section dedicated to the family and the morality in sense, not like in Iran. Russians have pornography, they definitely have gays, but gays in Russia are not allowed under the criminal persecution code around nowhere near children. Transgenderism is forbidden as being what you do. It doesn't mean that Russians persecute gays. No.
Sure.
If you want to screw somebody's butt, anyway, behind a closed door, feel free.
Go wild.
Go on. But you cannot have your freaking propaganda of your rather alternative lifestyle. And it's not going to be allowed in the culture. It's not going to be allowed, especially around children. And they cannot take it anymore. And if you look at the start of the also this cultural clash, fundamental clash, you would see that when the Sochi Olympic Games have been announced and were about to start, and Russia already first time introduced this law on the not forbidding the LGBT whatever propaganda. Obama sent to Olympic Games to Sochi, obviously, their so to speak human rights, the gay activists to represent the United States there. You know what? The message was received loud and clear. And that was basically the start of a complete detachment of Russia from the modern combined West. It is totally postmodernist. It's postmodernist in everything, as I already stated. And economy, military, scientifically, and it's also the fact that the combined West needs to insulate itself from Russia, because those ideas, being fundamental ideas of human existence for the last many tens of thousands of years, with the emergence of the first civilizations, with the emergence of our tradition, in the end, our genetics, they are too powerful to resist. The only thing you can, like Larry wrote yesterday, excellent piece, if you cannot beat them, just invent, shit, so to speak, and, go with it.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. That's the situation today.
Larry.
Yeah, no, I've just been stunned at the divorce from reality that's going on in the United States, and actually it started to turn. So a gentleman, Stephen Bryan is his name. He was a defense official under Reagan. He's part of the Jamestown Institute, so he could be, he was accused by some of being sort of a neocon, but he's not. But he was very much in the camp that, boy, Ukraine's winning the war. Ukraine's winning the war. And he put out a piece today titled, "All is Not Well for Ukraine." And Andrei, you're going to love this. Guess who was on the distribution list? Robert Kagan, Victoria Nuland, Fred Fleitz. I mean, I'm going to forward this to you. You got to see this. It's incredible.
I would love to.
But the point is that Stephen, to his credit, says, Ukraine is in real trouble right now, and he's understating it, because what's been taking place over the last week, basically there is a political house cleaning going on that I think is setting the table to get rid of Zelensky. So you had his communications director, Arestrovich. He's out. The top 3 people of the Ministry of Interior, think of this as like the head of the Department of Justice, the deputy of the Department of Justice, and then the head of the FBI getting killed in a helicopter crash. That happened last week. Question is whether it was, sabotage and deliberate to get rid of them or not. You've now had pressured several defense ministry officials that were appointed by Zelensky resign because there's a big corruption scandal. They were getting eggs for $7 and selling it to the government for $17 for the military. So they had their own version of the $600 hammer. You've got the head of military intelligence, Budanov, saying that the CIA equivalent, the SBU, murdered one of their assets that was part of the peace talk. So what you're seeing is just this the so-called coherent unity within the Zelensky government. It's coming apart at the seams as we watch, and that's not an exaggeration. So this thing is coming unraveled, and it's unraveling now quicker than I thought it would.
Jesus. Hey, Larry and Andrei, you guys keep talking. I got to use the restroom. I'll be back in 30 seconds.
Tommy, I need to go, actually.
Oh, you got to run? Okay.
Yeah, I need to go because I have other commitments. But
that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
You know what? Thank you for having me and absolutely. Larry. So, absolutely. So, Larry, just send me that. So, okay, guys, listen, I got to go myself. So, all the best to you and to your listeners. And Tommy, send me whatever there. I want to post it on my blog.
Sure.
Our communications today.
Absolutely.
So, send me the link or whatever. Okay.
Absolutely. And Andrei, I'm also I'd love to have you on to talk about your books. I think those could be some really cool episodes. So, I'll send you an email and we'll schedule those as well. And
Sure.
Larry,
My pleasure, Tommy. Yes. Right. Larry, I'll talk to you later, man.
Yeah. Okay, man. Bye.
Bye, guys.
All right.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
And your viewers can catch me at sonar21.com. That's where I blog.
Okay, SONAR, then the numbers 21.
Yep.
Sonar 21. All right, and I'll put that in the description. And Andrei's gone, so Larry, I'd love to have you on again as well, man. You guys are definitely some well-versed guys I like to shoot the shit with, and I do like getting schooled and just sitting here and realizing how utterly fucked everything is. But I do enjoy a red pill. A red pill is painful going down, but the truth always sets you free. And
Amen.
I will always enjoy that process. It's bewildering, but the reality is when you have an illusion wiped away, you realize that the illusion was never real and that you were simply entering reality. And it's always uncomfortable, followed by comfort. So I thoroughly appreciate it, and
I appreciate Aiden making this happen too.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you both for coming on. I'd love to have you guys on again sometime. Well, I'll send you guys the link, and thank you so much. Sonar21.com. I'll put that in the description. I'll put Andrei's blog and his books in the description, and thank you so much, man. Take care. Everybody,
Thank you, Tommy.
thank you
Bye-bye.
for watching. Yep. Thank you so much, sir. Take care, everybody. God bless. Stay safe. Peace.